Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Is it the whole shloka or is it a double shloka?
I know there's 6 lines. Is it
6 lines, okay. Yeah.
I'm just going to find it
So
here.
this is from Srimad Bhagavatam 7th Canto, Chapter 4, Text 8. Devodhyana Shriya Yustam Adhyaste Sma Tripishtapam Mahindra Bhavanam Saksham Nirmitam Vishvakarmana Trilokya Lakshmi Ayatanam Adhyuvasa Kilardhimat Devodhyana Shriyajustam Adhyaste Smatripishtapam Drabhavanam Saksham Nirmitam Vishvakarmana Trilokya Lakshmi Ayatanam Adhyuvasa Kilardhitam Devodhyana Shriyajustam Adhyaste Smatripishtapam Drabhavanam Saksham Nirmitam Vishvakarmana Trilokya Lakshmi Ayatanam Adhyuvasa Kilardhimat
Devodhyana Shriyajustam Adhyaste Smatripishtabham Indra Bhavanam Sakshan Nirmitam Vishvakarmana Trilokya Lakshmayatanam Adhyuvasa Kilardimat
Devodhyana Shriyajustam Adhyaste Smatripistapam Mahendra Bhavanam Saksham Nirmitam Vishvakarmana Trilokya Lakshmi Ayatanam Adhyuvasa Kilardimat
Devodhyana
Devodhyana
of the famous garden
the famous garden
of the demigods Shriya by the opulences Yustam enriched Adhyaste Sma remained in Tripishtapam the higher planetary system where various demigods live Mahendra Bhavanam the palace of Indra the king of heaven Sakshat directly Nirmitam constructed Vishvakarmana by the famous architect of the demigods Vishvakarma Trilokya of all the 3 worlds Lakshmi Ayatanam the residence of the goddess of fortune Adhyuvasa lived in Akilardimat,
Akilardimat,
possessing the opulence
possessing the opulence
of the universe.
of the universe.
Translation. Hiranyakashipu, who possessed all opulence, began residing in heaven with its famous Nandana garden, which is enjoyed by the demigods. In fact, he resided in the most opulent palace of Indra, the king of heaven. The palace had been directly constructed by the demigod architect Vishwakarma and was as beautifully made as if the goddess of fortune of the entire universe resided there. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. From this description it appears that all heavenly planets of the upper planetary system are thousands upon thousands of times more opulent than the lower planetary system in which we live. Vishwakarma, the famous heavenly architect, is known as the constructor of many wonderful buildings in the upper planets, where there are not only beautiful buildings but also many opulent gardens and parks, which are described as Nandana Devodyana, gardens quite fit to be enjoyed by the demigods. This description of the upper planetary system and its opulences is to be understood from authoritative scriptures like the Vedic literatures. Telescopes and other imperfect instruments of scientists are inadequate for evaluating the upper planetary system. Although such instruments are needed because the vision of the so-called scientist is imperfect, the instruments themselves are also imperfect. Therefore, the upper planets cannot be appraised by the imperfect man using imperfect man-made instruments. Direct information received from the Vedic literature, however, is perfect. He therefore cannot accept the statement that there are no opulent residences on planets other than this earth. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitinami Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Prachari Nirvisheshi Shunyavadi Pashkati Zatani. Hiranyakashipu, possessed all opulence, began residing in heaven with its famous Nandana garden, which is enjoyed by the demigods. In fact, he resided in the most opulent palace of Indra, the king of heaven. The palace had been directly constructed by the demigod architect Vishwakarma and was as beautifully made as if the goddess of fortune of the entire universe resided there. So, certainly, we can see in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is not indulging in some Vedic architecture. He goes right away to the core of the whole thing. Once again, taking any opportunity to blast and insult the scientists who claim to follow a process where they develop instruments to achieve knowledge. But it's a very simple logic behind that whole thing. How can you strive for more knowledge or more perfect knowledge with the tools at hand which are already developed by imperfect people with imperfect senses? You know, we know, like example, anybody who is indulging in photography knows what a job it is to make a lens, which is actually a replica of the eye. We have two lenses here, which have automatically autofocus, which are, contracting and, and enlarging again, this is just the eye. It's such a complicated instrument. So actually a camera is nothing else as a replica of an eye, and whoever indulges in photography knows what the camera can do to you. It's never perfect. It's always something there which you have to adjust, and now they have all kinds of programs, and and photography is if you want to do it really professionally, it's a very complicated thing. Depends on circumstances, light, and then I even remember manual cameras which didn't have an autofocus, nothing. You need a special gizmo to measure the light, and then you adjust, It took you 1 hour to make one picture, to find the right adjustment. But of course, these photos were relatively pretty good in comparison to nowadays autofocus. Everything is mechanical, just automatic, You just point, push. What comes out is a completely unpredictable result. Therefore, all the photographers and even all the musicians are going back to the analog manually operated gizmos where still the human being can prevail over the machine. But the scientists are preaching all the time. I mean, I learned it in a communistic school. In a year 1960, I learned that in a year 2000, nobody will work anymore. That was preached to me. There will be no more work. People will just sit in some kind of glass tubes in all kinds of perfectly air-conditioned, containers, and they will simply consume sense gratification. Everything will be done by the machines. They will not work. The machines will do all the work for them. I found this kind of psychedelic quality those days. There was illustrations to that, there was pictures, and also it's focused on pictures. And there was these people in these glass tubes, and of course everything was managed by the Russians. They were the master race. That was the communistic education. Later on I learned that no, it's not the Russians who are master race in technology, it's the Germans. Because I ended up going to a German school which actually preached exactly the same. That, not in the year 2000, that was already too close. But in the near future, we will just, everything be automatic. Germans already designed a cars now where you don't have to steer one thing. You just tune into a beam on a highway, This already technology does exist. And you just sit and read newspaper, and the car will go zoop. You program in a computer the destination, and the car goes. Now, how many times a day the computers are crashing? All this digital technology and everything. Just imagine the computer is operating a highway traffic of people automatically being transported on, remote control beams. One virus, one computer goes wrong. Can you imagine the crash of the whole thing when they pile on top of each other, while they were reading newspaper? It can be a massive disaster, So this is a stupidity which is constantly preached to people, that by our imperfect senses we will develop perfect machines. And by the help of the perfect machines, we will simply enjoy the senses, that's all. Because the whole technological development is only one aim, to enjoy more. But that you can do by eating a banana. That you can do by finding some female and have sex with it. That doesn't require any technology, really. There is so much technology naturally already involved there, we don't want to go in detail, which facilitates such an act, of sense gratification. So people were enjoying themselves quite okay for thousands of years without this machinery. Machinery was considered actually for the lower planetary systems, where there is, like example, dark. So everything is artificially illuminated. That aesthetical pictures come all the time up. All the time you see in advertisement everywhere. Everything darkened, It used to be always the bright colors and here we enjoy, Now they advertise products, it's all dark, and the man sits there completely frustrated, just about to commit suicide. But he has a new blue jeans. That's the new brand. Buy the jeans, commit suicide. Good advertising. Completely depressing images. Ugliness becomes a master of art. The more ugly you are, the more depressed you look like. That's our hero. The songs and everything is extremely depressing. People enjoy their own destruction. This is decadent. This is called decadent. It was previously also there. That people just really let the lower taste of the conditioned soul dominate, and they indulge with it. That's a decadence. That's always an introduction to the final destruction. It's interesting how there's always a blueprint of what is to come in all kinds of forms if you know how to read it. There's always inspiration, like a child. Child cannot walk, but by the super soul it gets a blueprint in the head. I'm walking. That's the most dangerous time. It happens between approximately between 1 and 2 years of age, the children walk. First they crawl, that's still quite harmless. You can control that, but when they start to walk, wow, life gets dangerous. Because they walk with no brain. They walk, into the big stairs and they go, I'm going to go down the stairs. They cannot make properly even one step and then they go blum, 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 blum. Fortunately, everything is so naturally arranged, that in that age, you hardly break anything. First of all, everything is new and elastic, the whole body. And second of all, you have no brain to put any resistance to that fall. So Krishna arranged in such a way that the child goes pling, plom, plom, plum, plom, plom, and cries. They have a saying, even the mothers, as long as he is crying, it's fine. When they are silent, that's bad, because then something really broke. But when they are crying, they pick him up. You cannot imagine from what hates and what kind of dangerous situation children can fall. It was just an accident. A whole airplane crashed in the middle of the river, touching the highway and end up from the bridge in the river. It's really funny when you drive a car and you have an airplane coming and bong, and just goes in the river. Pilot died, many grown-up people died, but a 2-year-old boy didn't die. He was sitting there in the middle of the river in an airplane seat and he was going, Mama! The airplane crashed in 1,000 pieces. He was just sitting there. Because they don't really put up any resistance. So everything is arranged by Krishna like that. You meditate about Nazi, you become a Nazi. You meditate about something, you are calling upon. That doesn't mean it always happens what you meditate, but you call upon that kind of circumstance. In one sense, we follow the same process. You meditate about Krishna, we meditate about the spiritual world, and we hopefully one day go there. It depends whatever you meditate, and whatever you meditate most strongly depends on what you desire most strongly. So the whole thing is based on desires. Like Hiranyakashipu had the ability to desire even the heavenly planets and to control the universe, and there he was, sitting in Indra's palace. It's just a question of desire, strong desire. And then Krishna is Anumanta and Upadrashta, he is observing, is it really what you want? Of course, the higher you aim, the more austerities you have to perform, because nothing comes for free. Krishna is not a waiter, that you come and go, waiter. He brings the menu and you choose from. Some people perceive Krishna consciousness like that. They follow the procedure, come in like a plow and come out like a needle. It's always the same thing. Those who approach Krishna consciousness like a plow, I'm here for Krishna, joy! You always see them coming out as a needle in a backyard. And those who come kind of humbly, take it easy. That's the start. We had a really good experience of this in Berlin Temple when we preached, just 2 brahmacharis, me and Bhakti Bhushana Maharaj. We had a really funny Sunday feast. It was bigger as here. But the flat was the size of this temple room, the whole flat. The kitchen, we didn't have a bathroom. Some hippie living in that flat before installed shower in a cupboard. It was a cupboard you open, and then there was a shower inside. But it was a wooden cupboard, so it was completely rotten. I don't know how he did that, but I tried somehow to fix it, but at the end we just left that flat anyway with that rotten cupboard. It was so much fungus there, you cannot imagine. We just had fungus everywhere. I built even an altar which I covered a whole piece of fungus growing on a wall, which was impossible to remove. Because it was in a backyard, in a third court. In Berlin, the houses are in squares. There's one square, and then there's inside more square, and then there's a last square. So when you live in the middle, in the last square of houses, there's no sunshine, there's nothing. There's not hardly any oxygen either. So that was our temple. And then, and we were sitting there, and sometimes 120 people came. And Bhakti Bhushana Maharaj had this wonderful procedure of preaching. Kirtan, lecture, prasadam. Kirtan, lecture, prasadam. Kirtan, lecture, prasadam. And in this way, the whole audience was shifted over and over again through this, until the last sweet bowl went out, and the pots were empty. We never had leftovers. And 2 o'clock in the morning, that was the third session, Yeah. Kirtan, lecture, prasadam, And there was always like 1, 2 boys sitting there in a corner, who the whole evening didn't say anything. I remember one of them, his later initiated name was Ekanathas. He was sitting in a corner, just listening. And Bhakti-Bhushan Maharaj was very expert. Like he knew how to preach to somebody, knowing well the other one is listening. So through him, he preached to him. Well, he had all kinds of techniques. Through all this feasting, it's not like we were like 3 times eating a full feast, not at all. Actually I didn't eat anything. I remember I was so involved. We were 2 brahmacharis handling the whole crowd. You have no time to sit down and eat. And it was completely okay. I felt completely like I ate a huge Sunday feast. And Bhakti-Bhushan Maharaj had technique. He always took a little prasadam in a paper plate. And when people took prasadam, he said, "Can I sit here?" "Oh yeah, please." And then he took a little bit and he checked the man out. Talked a little bit, few words, and he realized, he's an idiot. And then he moved to the kitchen, took again another, a little bit prasadam, and he said, "Can I sit here?" And then I just sit to the next one. And he was like completely anonymously moving through the crowd, checking out people, how much the brain goes and what can be done. And he was very, very clever with this, So 2 o'clock in the morning, there was a boy sitting there. We were living there too. And he asked, "Where are you sleeping tonight?" And I remember Bhakti-Bhushan said, "Here." We ended up actually lying in our sleeping bags. The boy was still sitting there. He was so fascinated, he didn't want to go home. And I remember Bhakti-Bhushan Maharaj preaching from the sleeping bag, just straight out. His preaching was very simple, very basic, very pure, and very uncompromising. He said it out, just straight out. I cannot even use some of these examples here because now we have ladies present, but it was really a brahmacharya stuff. Completed demolition. I remember that boy sitting there, and he was just still, he couldn't just go away. He was just listening, one lecture after another, one kirtan after another. He didn't say anything. So I was thinking, oh, that's interesting. So I said to him, I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm studying." He was studying something. He said, but he immediately looked at me very intense and said, "This is so nice here. What you are speaking, this is very interesting. But I don't say I can do that. I have a problem." And I said, "Really?" He said, "I'm in love." And I said, "Great. That's my department, Those days, brahmachari." So I said, "That's okay. Just bring her next Sunday." So next Sunday they came. He was like this size, and she was vocabulary double the size. Typical Berlin girl. Red, long copper hair. She looked really like Putana, And then, and he was like, "That's my girlfriend." I was going, "Really? Wow." Come in. And she was fired up. Those women in Berlin, they were like, bam! They stood in front of harmonium like this, going, "Great! Keep on singing." She was dressed like a man, And he was like, "Okay, that's hair." I was going, wow, what a combination. And as a matter of fact, they became for 1.5 years the most productive couple, in a congregation like that. Berlin was so bizarre. She arranged a program because Bhakti-Bhushan Maharaj had another approach. As soon as somebody got interested, we couldn't accommodate hardly anybody. We just had a one-room, flat. But he said, "We can visit you, arrange a program with your friends." And we had lots of these programs. People just inviting people, and then they invited us. So, and that's how it grew. We had no concept of some monastic congregation, nothing. It was just, actually the major goal of Bhakti-Bhushan Maharaj was always very keen on this, to make, devotees to join. That was his thing. which was very brahmachari-oriented preaching, actually. But the grihasthas were okay. So this couple went, and I remember that lady became a ferocious preacher, you know, she was just... We had one program in their flat, and the flat was amazing. It was one of these huge Berlin flats with the ceilings high like here. And our future Ekana Prabhu constructed all kinds of levels from pallets, you know. So you could walk all kind of bizarre things, you know. You were sitting on the balcony looking down, and then you went down, and the bathroom, they cast it completely in your bathroom with concrete, with a waterfall. There was a waterfall, you know. The water was coming like from the ceiling almost. Then from concrete was to make all kinds of sinks, which float and ultimately in a bathing tub. I was like, wow, there's a waterfall. Of course it was full of toothpaste and all kinds of things. It was completely, insanely dirty. So, you know, and she arranged a program with her friends. We're going, that's great. So we came there with our box with papadams, you know, that was our prasadam, and our can with lassi, and I carried the harmonium. Then we entered the flat and we couldn't believe what we saw. It was actually an assembly of some kind of Hells Angels, you know. All these biker guys sitting there, you know, going, ah, and they were drinking beer, and they were just, I was going, what a program. Oh, I just smiled cynically on Bhakti Bhushana Maharaj. Those days, Suchandra Das Brahmachari. And I just smiled at him. I was going, oh, a new Bhakta program is coming. So we sit down in a corner of the big room, and there was these guys, and they were lying there with their girlfriends, all dressed in leather, and they were just, you know, drinking, completely ignoring our presence. So, you know, and then Bhakti Bhushana Maharaj just started to sing, you know, that's all. And then, you know, kirtan, you know, that's all. And I was wondering, will there be a lecture here today? I don't think so, you know. So finally he stopped, you know, the chanting and attempted to speak something. And one of these gentlemen, huge guy, he raised up and he said, shut up.